It's such a beautiful place. 2 years ago, not so long after the war started, I was the best man in a Chinese wedding. Okay, the groom is a good mate, and he asked me to be his best man. I said, of course, because I'm fascinated by the Chinese people, the Chinese culture, the food. I'm convinced that I was Chinese in previous life. I kept a small penis. Short but thin, as I always brag. But yeah, seriously, full-on Chinese wedding, and I was the only non-Chinese. Surely they invited me as some sort of attraction. We'll have a great venue, we'll have food, we'll have a Jew. 104 guests. I'm the only non-Chinese, let alone a Jew. But I was welcomed. No anti-Semitism. You know what's worse than anti-Semitism? Not giving a fuck. And they didn't. And I want them to. Because 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, back at the end of November, if you remember, that was where they released the first batches of hostages. And that was the third batch. And like many, I was emotional. I was glued to my app, to my news app, and I wanted to speak about it. I had my chance. At the family table, the family wanted to know who I am, easily spotted. And I told them, I gave 4 or 5 minutes of speech about the Hamas and about the horror and about everything that happened. Seriously, like Bibi in the Congress. That's how passionate I was. When I finished, my friend translated me to the family, very briefly, 1 or 2 lines, and asked him, Aaron, did you capture everything? And he said, yeah, I told them that you're the good guys, they're the bad guys, and it's complicated. Which pretty much sum it up. But then one of the aunties said something, and I told him, what did she say? He said, she asked if you can continue to chat because she likes your accent. Now, I build my career upon my accent. I do stand-up comedy for toddlers. For real. I started when my kids were in daycare. I love that age, 3 to 5, just before they become racist. Perfect age. So I come, I tell a few bad jokes, and they immediately start to giggle. They love the accent. Okay, and I continue to do my accent because I'm good at it. Because that's our shtick, the Israelis. The accent, you know, the English, the rough English that Yitzhak Rabin spoke. That and the hand gestures. Okay, you know how hard it is for Israeli these days to speak on Zoom or Google Meet? Every hand gesture there, confetti, balloons, not related to the content of the conversation. Now, because that we're easily spotted in the crowd, for many years, there are travel guidelines for Israeli overseas. And it always goes like, when you're overseas, don't speak a lot of Hebrew. Don't group. Don't stand out. Keep a low profile. Now, it's very hard for us to keep a low profile because we're so good. We're the best. We're better than any one of you, and we want you to know it. When my mother-in-law first came to Australia, to Sydney, we took her to all of the holy places. We took her to the iceberg pool. She immediately commented, it's like Gordon in Tel Aviv. We took her to the Blue Mountains. The Carmel Mountains are better. We took her to see the Harbor Bridge. We know how to build bridges. Now, one of the travel guidelines cover probably the most dangerous moment for Israeli overseas is when we enter a taxi. Remember taxi? That's the smelly cars before the mint flavor Ubers. In Australia, taxis is like a Kinder egg. You open the door, you don't know which Middle Eastern you're going to get. Now, the travel guideline says that when you enter a cab and the cab driver asks you where you're from, never say Israel, never say Israel. Always speak a random country. The preference is one of those Eurovision countries that didn't vote for us one because they're anti-Semitic. You know, think about Malta, Macedonia. The best one, Montenegro. Nobody knows where it is. It's a conversation killer. You have a smooth ride. Now, my first encounter with a cabbie was back in Melbourne. Stepped out of the airport, enter a cab, we start the ride, start to chat. He asked me, where are you from? I always say Israel. A brave little Jew, always say Israel. Where are you from? Lebanon. And we started to chat. Now, I speak Arabic. I used to be an Arabic teacher, but with a disclaimer, I speak Arabic with an Yiddish accent because I'm Ashkenazi. Now, I always explain the difference between Ashkenazi to Sephardi to non-Jews. I tell them it's like the difference between Melbourne and Sydney. Both are Aussies, but something is missing with the Melbournians. So we're chatting, and it's a beautiful ride, and I feel comfortable, and I ask him, what brought you to Australia? And he looked at me through the mirror and said, you guys in 1982. Awkward silence. Luckily, somebody cut us on the road, and both of us simultaneously started to swear in Arabic. The most beautiful words, swear words, are in Arabic. We use them a lot, the Israelis. You know, we're so much alike in swear words, in food. We also look alike. We live now, in the last couple of years, we live in the Shire, in a beautiful settlement called Grace Point. We increased the number of Jews from 0 to 6. 4 more, we have minyan and we can claim the space. And by the way, when we live in such an Aussie place, my wife and I, we have a method on how to make friends with non-Jews. All right? Every time that we see a new couple, we ask the question, if the moment will come, will they snitch to the Nazis? Will they put an Anne Frank on us? If the answer is yes, so we're not friends. If the answer is no, friends for life. So, we live in the Shire, and for the first few months, the kids were still in their school in Botany. That's where we used to be before. And we used to drive them every day. One day, my wife took by accident, she took the 2 sets of keys. I needed to bring them to school. Didn't have keys. Tried Uber. Uber wasn't available. 3 cabs. Muhammad came. Muhammad, long beard, big yarmulke, comes in. Kids at the back. We're starting to the ride, and you know it's morning time, so it takes time. You always wait 2 sets of lights. The question comes up: where are you from? Israel. Where are you from? Palestine. Oh. Where? Friendly. Where in Palestine? Jenin. Now, Jenin, that was probably, it's now almost 3 years ago, before the war, well before the war, there was an operation in Jenin. There was never a dull moment there. And he commented on that. He said, yeah, there's now quite a mess. Balagan, even used the word balagan. There is quite a mess now in Jenin. And I thought, why didn't I say Montenegro? So we continue the ride, and it's an awkward silence, and it's a long time. It's morning, it's traffic, it's Brighton, Los Angeles, all the traffic lights. It takes a time. We arrived to a Botany industry area, all right? There is a set of lights. Green light, it doesn't move. Now, my heart is pumping. I look at the kids there at the back in their iPhone, couldn't care less. And it's not driving. And I'm starting inside and saying, what? I don't even know how to say Shema Israel properly, you know? I don't know. Okay, 2 states. Take Jerusalem. We'll give you Tel Aviv as well. And kids to get to school. And he turns to me and he says, you know, from the first moment that I saw you, and the heart is pumping, and you know we were just us on the traffic. From the first moment that I saw you, I knew that you look exactly like my cousin Samer from Gaza. And we continued the ride, and it was a beautiful chat. There's a beautiful song by Leonard Cohen that has a beautiful line that says that there's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. So, amen for that. Thank you very much.